Picture this. You are 62 years old. You're finally eligible to start collecting on Social Security. And everywhere you turn, people are telling you the government's going broke. You should collect now. Or it's time to collect now. There's no way to guarantee that this money's going to be here. By 2034, the money's gone. So you do what seems logical. You file for benefits at 62. You get what's yours and you try and get it early. Congratulations. You just collected Social Security early for the worst possible reason. Now, look, could the fearmongers be right? Yes, it is possible. But I would also say that we've been here before, and there are many levers that can be pulled to make sure that this is avoided. If you've not yet met, my name is Danny Sinowitz. I'm a CFP professional from Hyperion Financial. If you're interested in evaluating your Social Security strategy, check out the link below to get a better idea of how that could work with your retirement planning in general. Let's make sure we separate some of the fears versus realities of Social Security and the incoming insolvency crisis that we're about to face. Yes, it is true that Social Security is heading towards a cliff in 2034. If things continue on as they have been, and it could technically be a little earlier or a little bit later, but as it stands right now, we're about 9 to 10 years away from having more benefits being paid out than are being put in. That being said, Social Security is a pay as you go system. As money comes in, it goes out. It's no secret that there are 10,000 baby boomers who are retiring each and every single day. And the workforce that is supporting those baby boomers are not quite projected what they were supposed to be. We've seen declining birth rates and some folks that aren't entering into the workforce. And as a result, the money that's been going out has not quite matched up to the money that's been going in. But that said, as long as people continue working and are paying payroll taxes, those dollars are going to continue to go out. If it gets to the point in 2034 and no action is taken, it wouldn't necessarily mean a stoppage of all benefits. It would just mean a reduction of benefits. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's certainly not a desirable thing, especially for folks that are relying on Social Security as their sole source of income. It's a very serious topic, and it's not one to make light of. But here is the thing that most people should realize, but I don't often think they make this connection. It's that retirees who would have Social Security affected probably would get very angry. And that's the thing. Retirees are also one of the strongest voting blocs in the United States. Therefore, Congress, it's in their own best interest to stay reelected. They do not want to anger retirees, and as a result, would want to make sure that Social Security stays strong. And this is actually something that I think both parties would agree to. It's rare, if ever, that Social Security benefits would be cut. If anything, they're either held level or increased. But the problem becomes how you pay for those Social Security benefits. And that is incumbent on the worker. Depending on how old you are, this may sound familiar. For many folks that may realize that there was a Social Security crisis in the past, they'd be correct. The year is 1983, and Social Security isn't 10 years away from insolvency. It is a few months away from insolvency. The trust fund was very, very close to running out, and folks were preparing for a cut and a reduction in benefits from their Social Security payments. But at that point in time, President Reagan formed a bipartisan congressional group, and it was headed by the Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, who you may be familiar with. And this group implemented changes to make sure that Social Security stayed solvent. Now, some of these changes that have been implemented may not have been the most popular at the time, but what it did do is make sure that recipients of Social Security continued to receive their benefits. Some of those changes included raising the retirement age gradually from 65 to 67. It also included gradual payroll tax increases as well through the years. It also brought federal workers into the Social Security system who were not previously part of the Social Security system. And lastly, it introduced tax for beneficiaries for the first time. Now, in the 1980s, they were considered higher income earners, and those figures have not been adjusted for inflation since then. We've done a video on that, so it's something to be aware of. But that being said, these changes were implemented, and at the time, it had actually increased the solvency issue for several decades. The crisis seemed insurmountable, and yet it was solved. And it is very congressional to solve this at the last minute. It's also possible that this could be the case for future administrations because Congress typically has not wanted to touch Social Security benefits. They will generally wait until the last second to solve these problems, but when they need to, there are levers that they can pull. So, what are some of those levers that can be pulled? Before I mention them, this is not advocacy for one policy versus another. At the end of the day, somebody's going to have to pay these benefits. It could be a group of people, whether that be the rich, whether that be workers, whoever that would be. So I'm not necessarily taking a stance in what is right and what is wrong. I'm simply outlining some of the possibilities that are out there. Generally, it tends to be a combination of different factors that can go into this, and Congress will do their best to spread it out as fairly and evenly as possible. But some of those things include eliminating or raising the payroll tax cap. Each and every single year, the Social Security payroll tax is capped at a level that has been indexed for inflation. So while that number does go up each and every year, higher income earners are capped on how much they have to pay. One thing that's gained popularity has been eliminating this payroll tax cap or significantly raising it. Again, while this isn't advocating for or against it, that is one way in which the revenue shortfall can be accounted for. Another way would be looking back into history and doing something similar, a modest payroll tax increase over a period of time. Looking at something like a 0.1% increase over several years could help bridge that gap. Again, Congress doesn't like to do anything too sudden that would affect people too quickly. Therefore, they may look to do something gradually. If they do something gradually, people don't feel it as much. They may not actually say, well, I'm mad at this politician. They're going to kick the can down the road as best as possible to make sure that you're not affected right away. It's something that is gradually felt, but they also want to make sure that they protect the retiree voting block. Something else that could be done is broadening the actual tax base. They may look to actually tax 401k contributions up to a certain level. They could look at investment earnings that could be taxed. Again, I'm not saying that this is a good or a bad idea. It's just levers in which the government can pull to make sure that retirees are covered. Now, don't get me wrong, each of these things would affect current workers or potentially other retirees in negative ways. So again, this isn't to say that this is a fair move or something that Social Security would or should do. What it is to say is that there are levers that can be pulled to make sure that retirees have Social Security into the future. There are also benefit adjustments that could be made, such as potentially adjusting the COLA increases to a less favorable amount. They could further push back the retirement ages, again, maybe in a gradual way. In theory, they could also increase the amount of tax that's being paid or do so for higher income earners. I don't necessarily think that's something that they're going to do because, again, those voters tend to vote. So, therefore, they're probably going to stay away from benefits and instead look to take from some of the workers and do so in a gradual way. With all of this, it comes down to the political reality that Social Security has long been the third rail of politics. If you touch Social Security or affect it, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to create an angry voting bloc, which tends to vote, and that party will be removed from power. That's also a reason why nobody wants to touch this issue until it's staring them right in the face. But let's go back to you as the retiree who should be giving consideration to this move itself. If you're worried about the government running out of money, I hope it's been clear by now that there are moves that can be made to avoid this. If you retire at 62 and your full retirement age is 67, you're looking at a 30% reduction of benefits. And yes, I understand that you're looking at a difference of a full retirement age number, in which you're collecting for at least 5 years prior. But that number and those figures are set for the rest of your life. If you wait until 70, you can get a 24% increase on your full retirement age number, which again would take place for the rest of your life. In this scenario, we're talking about the rest of your life in which you'd be collecting this. So if you pass away early, obviously it may make more sense to collect early. If you pass away later in life and you have a long, healthy retirement, it could make sense to delay. We don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's a big factor in all of this is the unknown of how long you'll be alive and all the things that can and will either go wrong or right to determine whether or not Social Security should be collected early or later. Ultimately, that's where it comes back to. It should be more focused on you than it should be the government or the government's actions. Yes, the government will have some sort of action moving forward, positive or negative, and how that will affect you. It's unclear at the time. And if you're unsure about your age in which you should be collecting, this video right here will help guide you to making the best decision possible that you maximize your Social Security benefit.